This is what you find on the net when you do a Google search and look at images. So this is one of those traditional images of the conversation, which we call the Bhagavad Gita. And what we have today is, of course, along the pattern that I established in the last session. So we'll have a quick welcome, which is what we did when we were having our introduction to each other and, of course, meeting up after some years. Then we look at what we mean by macro principles and micro setting, because this is important to understand the various commentaries that we have with the Gita, as well as the various scriptures that are available to us, because the Indian tradition has a large number of scriptures, as well as the scriptures that are available in other religions also. So it gives you a kind of standard to understand the Bhagavad Gita, as well as see how it compares with other scriptures, if at all you want to do that. And it also helps you understand the various commentators and the approaches they take. So that is what I will be doing in macro principles and micro setting. Then I have titled this entire session as the practical wisdom. So your question would be, what do we mean by practical wisdom? And I will explain that just by one slide. These are both one slide each. And then we'll get into the second session itself, which is looking at the shlokas 2 to 6 of chapter 1. Of course, we'll be going through the shlokas, sequentially, one after the other. So I hope to complete that since we started at 12:20, by around, since I would like to have 20 minutes for our conversation, I will end at 5 to 1. And from 5 to 1 to 1:15, 20 minutes, we have an open discussion where the questions you have raised then and there on chat, as well as the questions you would like to ask or share insights. It need not be questions, because we are all, after all, we are all 59, 60 years old. So we have our own experience in life, which is relatable to what I'm going to say in the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm more of your peer in terms of, putting things together, rather than any kind of Swami, which I would like to reiterate again and again. Though I may not have hair like a Swami, but then that's because I've become bald. But then we look at a discussion which will help us all bring our perspectives to the table, and then we'll close by 1:15. So with that, let me go on to the slide, which is about macro principles and micro setting. So the Bhagavad Gita is a mixture of macro principles and micro settings. So now, what exactly do you mean by macro principles? By macro principles, of course, I can read out what is there. By macro principles, you mean the universal, just like in science, we have universal laws in physics, universal laws in chemistry. These are, kind of universal laws of human behavior, or universal laws, behind the way the universe operates. So these are what I call the macro principles. And they speak to you, to your intellect or buddhi. So these appeal to you because you need to understand them. They are usually understood. Yeah, you can understand them intellectually, you can understand them, but bringing them into practice is always a challenge, as we know in life. You have a principle, but to operationalize the principle takes a lot of discipline. So that is what I mean by macro principles. But then there is the concept of micro setting. So the micro setting of the Gita is, of course, the Mahabharata. It is the Sanatana Dharma tradition. It is a whole load of cultural ethos which is built around the Bhagavad Gita, and therefore it is very, very indigenous. It is very, very local. It is very, very Sanatana Dharmi, if I may say. So the point is, we cannot totally disengage the micro setting from the macro principles. So the macro principles have been derived from the micro setting. Of course, you may then question me, why am I calling it macro and micro? Why not simply call it principles and setting? So you have a valid point. So these are simply terms that are used the way they are when people talk about philosophy. So I have picked up the terminology from philosophy. You could as well call it principle and setting, or principle and context. So the point is, number 4 is that you cannot totally divorce the principle from the setting, right? So much as you may want to say that We should only be looking at the principle and not at the setting, but that's not possible. So the point that is being made is that you cannot look at the tree in the absence of the sun or the soil from which it draws its sustenance. And therefore, every religion or religious text has to be understood with reference to the soil. However, point number 5 is that when we focus only on the micro setting, it leads us to maybe some kind of aggressive pride in one's own culture and nationality. And that is counterproductive, because one of the lessons of the Bhagavad Gita is to curb pride. So that's the overall concept of macro principle and micro setting. But I would like to elaborate a little more in terms of how we can understand this with respect to some of the commentators of the Gita. For example, if you take a philosopher like Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, whose birthday we celebrate on Teachers' Day, he is a person who will emphasize macro principles, and for him the micro setting would not be that important, because he would like to emphasize the principles of the Bhagavad Gita rather than the context of the Bhagavad Gita, or going deep into the context. So that is one category of commentators you have. So typically, whenever you have a philosopher or a scientist commenting on the Gita, it is high on macro principles and low on micro setting. Now, if you take someone like ISKCON is totally devoted to Krishna consciousness, and therefore their commentary is very high on micro setting and may not be that focused on macro principles, because they are trying to understand the entire Bhagavad Gita in terms of the micro setting, which is the Krishna consciousness. Then whenever you take any foreign translation, there are a number of foreigners, basically Westerners, who have translated the Bhagavad Gita and may have commented on it. So there I regard them as being okay on macro principles, but very low on micro setting, because micro setting, they do not understand the Indian context, the Sanatan Dharma, and they do not get things right. Now the final quadrant, so I have kind of made a 4-box quadrant with which as engineers we are all familiar. So the 4th box is being high on macro principles and high on micro setting, which is highly looking at the context. So there are some commentators like this, like you have Swami Ram Sukh Das of the Gita Press. He has written a book called Sadhak Sanjeevani, and in that he is all for Krishna in terms of the religious setting, and he's all for understanding the principles of the Bhagavad Gita. So this concept of macro principle, micro setting is a good one to have as we try to organize our own understanding of the Gita. Because as I have said earlier, the commentator that you are referring to also plays an important role in our understanding of the Gita. So that is to explain to you this particular context of understanding the commentaries. Now we look at the practical wisdom. So when I say practical wisdom, what I mean by practical is, see, we can always refer to the Mahabharata, as we'll be doing in fact today, with respect to some of the shlokas to understand. So whenever we are relating to some of the previous chapters of the Mahabharata, or relating the characters to the Mahabharata, is very practical. So that is epic related references that we have. Then we have psychology related. So these are all with respect to how we understand the human mind, and a lot of research has happened also in terms of modern psychology. So whenever we have that kind of reference in the Bhagavad Gita, it's practical. Then there will be some scientific principles which we'll be able to uncover in the Bhagavad Gita, and that is the scientific principle related practical knowledge of the Gita. And then we'll be looking at leadership and management related principles, which is where we will find a lot of wisdom, or rather I should not use the word wisdom, a lot of information and knowledge in the Gita. Then when it comes to wisdom, there is a lot of deep spirituality which you will find in the Gita, which you'll be able to understand if you're doing some meditation yourself, and if you have been reading the Gita again and again, for some time, because it does not come that easily. So with whatever experience I have, I'll be able to explain it. And for other elements of deep spirituality, I'll be referring to some of the commentators who are deeply spiritual commentators of the Gita. Then point number B under wisdom is traditional schools of thought or parampara or sampradaya. So we have, Advaita, then we have Dvaita, and then we have, Bheda, Bhed. There are various schools of thought or sampradaya. Then we have, Chintya, Achintya, which is what is used by ISKCON in their own thinking. So we have those schools of thought, which is the sampradaya. Then we have New Age spirituality, in the sense that, it is not that, only the people from the Sanatana Dharma, of which the religious text is Bhagavad Gita. It's not that only Hindus are the spiritual people. There are spiritual people all over the world. And a lot of studies have tried to find parallels between spirituality, and spirituality is the same actually. There is no difference. There is no American spirituality or Christian spirituality or Hindu spirituality. Spirituality is the same, and that is what is called New Age spirituality, and that is the ethos for the 21st century, because the 21st century is full of a lot of interesting technological development. So how do you anchor technology with the Bhagavad Gita? Those are all some of the questions that we can possibly look at. So that is to explain to you the two approaches that we have, the practical wisdom, because for every shloka, you will find one element or the other, either 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, or 2A, 2B, 2C, or a combination of 1 to A to D and 2 of A to C. So that's what we will try to pin for every shloka that we have, to see which of these aspects we are able to gather from the shloka. So now coming to the organization of chapter 1, I think we looked at this in the last class, and of course we will keep looking at this as long as we are doing chapter 1. So chapter 1 begins with the question, and we understand that there is no life without struggle, and now we'll be looking at the forces in the battle of life, and we're looking at shlokas 2 to 6, hopefully in the time that we have available with us today. So, and then of course the next set of shlokas 13 to 25 are about the inner and outer battlefield of life, and finally we have Arjuna's crisis, which is from shloka 25 to 47, a large number. So nearly half of the first chapter is devoted to Arjuna talking about why he won't fight, and we look at that in detail as we go along. Now coming to the first shloka, we did this in a certain amount of detail, but I just want to recap the shloka itself and two insights from the shloka. So Dhritarashtra Uvacha, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, Samaveta Yutsava, Mamaka Pandavascheva, Kimma Kuruvata Sanjaya. No. So basically Dhritarashtra says, "O Sanjay, after gathering on the holy field of Kurukshetra and desiring to fight, what did my sons and sons of Pandu do?" And in Hindi, Dhritarashtra ne kaha, "Hey Sanjay, Dharma Bhumi कुरुक्षेत्र में एकत्र हुए युद्ध के इच्छुक मेरे और पांडु के पुत्रों ने क्या किया?" So this being the question, of course, we elaborated over some 10 slides last, but two additional insights I want to give. One is very interesting, that if you interpolate the words, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, you simply put the Kshetre together. So Kshetre, Kshetre, Dharma Kuru. So that's one of the key messages of the shloka, which is in every single field of duty, of action, do your duty. So Kshetre, Kshetre, Dharma Kuru. That's one very interesting insight that I gathered from one of the commentaries. And the second insight with respect to shloka 1 is derived from the fact that in ancient India, whenever they composed the text, the first word of the text and the last word of the text had to actually give the summary of what the entire text meant. So Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, we have seen is the first shloka, and the last one also you would have heard many a times, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shiv Vijayo Bhutir, Dua Nitra Matir Mama. So Dharma Mama becomes the first and the last word of the Gita. So in other words, all that you have within the 700 shloka can be collapsed into dharma and mama, which is my duty. So that's one more insight that we have from the first shloka, of course, with the last word of the last shloka being added on for generating the insight. So now let's come to shloka 1.2, which is the shloka that we have at hand, where we'll be looking at it in a certain amount of detail. So the shloka is Sanjaya Uvacha, Drishtva tu Pandavanekam Vyudam Duryodhanastada Acharyam Upasangamya Raja Vachanam Abravit. So the word-to-word meaning is, Sanjaya Uvacha, Sanjay said, Drishtva is on observing, tu is indeed, Pandava Anikam. So Anikam means army, so Pandava Anikam is Pandava's army. Vyudham, so Vyudha we understand is a military formation. So we look at the military formation. So on seeing the military formation of the Pandava army, Duryodhana, that is Duryodhana we all know, Tada, then at that point in time, Acharyam Upasangamya, he went to his teacher. Now we know that the teacher of both the Pandavas and Kauravas was Dronacharya. Upasangamya, Upasangamya means approaching Raja, of course. He is being called Raja, but we will find out why he is being called Raja. Vachanam, so Vachan we understand, in Hindi it is word or speech. Abravit, spoke these words. So the translation is straightforward. On observing the Pandava army standing in military formation, King Duryodhana approached his teacher Dronacharya and said the following words. So Sanjay ne kaha, पांडव सैन्य की व्यूह रचना देखकर राजा दुर्योधन ने आचार्य द्रोण के पास जाकर ये वचन कहे. So now let us deconstruct this a little more. So I just did some homework on what kind of vyudha was there. So there is this, Sarvatomukhi Danda Vyuha, as it is called, of the Pandava, of the Kaurava army. And then on the first day, so this is all on the first day. And on the first day, the Pandava army was in a Vajra Vyuha. So you can see at least, we are not, of course, experts in terms of whether it's appropriate to have this Vyuha versus that. But we can see at least geometrically there seems to be some kind of penetrative ability of the Sarvatomukhi Danda Vyuha of the Kaurava army and a kind of restrictive ability of the Vajra Vyuha of the Pandava army. And then, of course, you can see that, there are various, commanders of the armies who have been placed both in the Pandava, and you can also see some of the names in the Kaurava army. So this is typically a military phalanx. And of course, the point is Duryodhana. Okay, so the key figure is Duryodhana. So let's look at some of the thoughts behind Duryodhana. So see, 1 to 5 is a very traditional point of view. Okay, so the point of view traditionally is that Duryodhana was afraid because he was on the wrong side of Dharma, and that all the elders had predicted his defeat, and that he had, of course, a lot of vanity and arrogance. And when you are very vain and arrogant, probably you are a coward and you have a certain amount of fear also. And fear is not an auspicious sign. So the above is a traditional interpretation, and then therefore he went to his teacher to get some kind of reassurance from the teacher, because Drona was the one who taught him, number one. Number two, Drona was also someone who could give him some kind of guidance in his moment of fear. So that is the traditional interpretation, but my own personal opinion, it's only an opinion, it is not backed, it's just my opinion, that Duryodhana was extremely upset over the kind of vyuha, so let's look at that the Pandava army had put together, and he wanted to go and talk to his teacher and upbraid his teacher for creating the warriors standing in the vyuha. So he wants to say that, look, you are the one who created all those warriors on the opposite side, and look at what they have done, is perhaps what he wanted to say, given his own arrogance, right? So he's an arrogant guy, and he anyway did not listen to Dronacharya and to the elders in respecting their advice not to start the war. So since he does not respect them and he has started the war, I personally don't think that he was actually afraid and anxious, but nevertheless, you see, you will get multiple opinions on this when you read different commentators. So I'm just presenting a point of view. So there is one more point of view, and this is the spiritual point of view. about Duryodhana. So the spiritual point of view is that, you see, Dhritarashtra was spiritually blind and he was also physically blind. So the son of a spiritually blind Dhritarashtra can only be spiritually blind himself. That is the interpretation that we have. And the son of a physically blind but very ambitious Dhritarashtra is someone who is totally having only materialistic desires and no spiritual desire at all. So one more interpretation of Duryodhana is that he is someone who is full of materialistic desires, which is obvious because he wants to retain the kingdom. He doesn't want to give even 5 needle points of territory to the Pandavas. And therefore, he is who he is. And one more interpretation of Duryodhana is Duh Yudham Yahasa, one who is very difficult to fight with. So he was a known brave warrior. His weapon was the Gadha, as you understand, and there was a famous Gadha Yudh at the end of the Mahabharata war between him and Bhim. So that is how his name is deconstructed. But I think the broader point being made is that he is Duhyudham because he represents materialistic desire, and materialistic desire is very powerful and is not easy to defeat. And therefore, we all understand, we've all been in active life ourselves. So I think perhaps when we are now 59, 60, we are thinking of becoming a little spiritual, but I'm sure that all of us, have had a lot of materialistic desires, house and then, whatever that goes along with professional success. So it is not wrong to have, but having only that would be where we have a problem. So the Bhagavad Gita is never against materialistic desires. It is only against exclusive devotion to materialistic desires. And that is what is being represented by Duryodhan here. Now let's look at why did he go to the Acharya? So that is a question. So you see, usually when you have a crown prince, now technically he was a crown prince, he was not a Raja because the king was actually Dhritarashtra. And whenever someone from the royalty asks for someone to be called, they come. So usually Dronacharya will be called for by Duryodhana, but that did not happen. So why did he deviate from the royal tradition? Again, the same point that I made, probably, it was out of some kind of fear, which is again the traditional interpretation. But then definitely not out of respect, because he did not obey his guru who had warned against the war, and he did not respect the guru who otherwise. So there's one more reason why he may not have respected the guru, because the guru was always supporting Duryodhana in all his wrong acts. And therefore, while Duryodhana was an evil person himself, even one evil person does not respect the other evil person. So as they say, chor chor chachere bhai. So he thought that that Dronacharya was also a chor in one sense, because he was supporting all the evil deeds of Duryodhan and his brothers. So that's again multiple points of view for us to learn. Then, of course, now the question is, why did Sanjay use the word Raja? Now, Raja actually means one who shines in his own glory. And of course, it is being used in a very sarcastic and ironical way by Sanjay, saying that ye jo aapka Raja beta hai, because he's talking to Dhritarashtra, ye aapka Raja beta hai, bahut nalayak hai, and all those things are inherent in the use of the word Raja, because actually Raja is only Dhritarashtra but not Duryodhana. So one to be calling Duryodhana as Raja is a very sarcastic way of your nalayak son is shining in his glory of stupidity. That's the interpretation that's being given. So that is the broad interpretation that we have of Shloka 1.3. 1.2. So let's go to 1.3. So I will chant the shloka. Pashetam Panduputranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata. So what this means is, of course, the word-to-word meaning is there. Pashetam is look at this. Panduputranam, sons of Pandu, He Acharya. So Acharya is being addressed. Mahatim Chamum. So Chamum is another word for army, like Anikam in the previous shloka. And Vyudham is again like we had in the previous shloka, the military formation. Drupada Putrena. So who has created this military formation? The son of Drupad, named Drishtadyumna, who has the qualification of being your Shishya and very, very intelligent. So essentially, what Duryodhana is saying here is, hey, respected teacher, hey, Acharya, behold the army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arrayed for battle by your own gifted disciple, the son of Drupad. And of course, in Hindi, just so that, we have the flavor. After all, we are all from Allahabad, right? Hey, Acharya, आपके बुद्धिमान शिष्य द्रुपद पुत्र धृष्टद्युम्न द्वारा व्यूहाकार खड़ी की गई पांडु पुत्रों की इस महती सेना को देखिए. So he's just pointing out to the opposite side. And something about teachers, because this I picked up from one of the commentators. So Acharya is one who walks the talk, as we say in modern language, one who knows the meaning of the scriptures of the Vidya. So so the Acharya that we talk about, Dronacharya, he knows Dhanur Vidya, which is the Vidya of warfare. Okay, so he knows the scriptures, he practices the teaching himself and teaches it to others also. There are, of course, other grades of teachers in ancient India. So Adhyapak is a basic level teacher. Then Upadhyay in those days was a teacher of the Vedas, and Guru was a spiritual preceptor. So just for you and your information in terms of what Acharya means. Then the whole question is, why does Duryodhana use the term Tava Shishyena Dhimata? So the point is that there was a animosity, a difference of opinion, rivalry or a revengeful attitude between Drupad and Dronacharya, because they were both students at ashram when they were younger, and then as students they were equal, but then when I think they were leaving, there was a quarrel over the status of the two. So Drupad said that you are just a very poor fellow and I am a king, and therefore we are not equals. We may have been equals as students, but we are not equals henceforth. So that really hurt the pride of Dronacharya. And of course, there is a longer story behind this. So Drupad had wanted, so actually what happened was that in one of the battles they had, Drupad was overpowered by Dronacharya and by the Pandavas. So he had wanted a son who would be able to kill Dronacharya, and that was Drishtadyumna. But you see, Dronacharya was also such a teacher, he never refused to teach anybody, even if they were potential killers of his. So he taught Drishtadyumna, and therefore he's referring to Drishtadyumna as someone who is going to kill you, someone whom you also trained, and someone who is the son of your great rival. So the importance of this statement also lies in the fact that buddhi, dhi is an important word in the Indian tradition. So tava shishyena dhimata. So dhi is something that we find in the famous Gayatri mantra also, tatsa viturvarenam bhargo devasya dhimahi. So dhimata, dhimahi means someone who's using his buddhi, or someone who's using his intellect, and therefore someone, so the whole term buddhi is important, and that's what I wanted to highlight. So you're a very intelligent student, and so the entire Indian civilization is a very powerful civilization and has withstood the test of time, because we are all dhimata, we are all intelligent people, which is why we do very well in every field of activity. And that's the overall implication I wanted to pull out. Now, of course, I'm coming back to that view, Vyudha, but you will find that at least in the internet representation, you cannot find Arjuna anywhere. I cannot find Arjuna. So the whole question is, it's a question for all of you also. Please find for me an image where in this Vajra Vyuha, you can find Arjuna. So again, just out of interest, I put this. But let's go to this important set of 3 shlokas. So I'm going to chant the shloka, and it is simply a list of names, and we'll come to what this means. So Atra Shura Maheshwasa Bhima Arjuna Samayudhi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharatah Drishtaketuschekitana Kashi Rajascha Viryavan Purjit Kunti Bhojascha Shaibhyascha Narapungavah Yudhamanyuscha Vikranta Uttamaujascha Viryavan Saubhadro Draupadeyascha Sarva Eva Maharathaha. So you can see it's a listing of names, which is why I have called it, Pandava generals. So there's a list of the Pandava generals. So he's pointing out, so he's looking across, he's seeing the army on the opposite side. So this is basically Duryodhan. So Duryodhan sees Bhim, then he sees Arjun, and then that list. So the list of the names is important from 2 points of view. So this is the translation. Behold, in their ranks are many powerful warriors like Yudhan, Virat, Drupad, wielding. Of course, there are descriptions of Maharatha, Samayudhi. So these are all adjectives or descriptors of the various warriors that he's naming. So who are the warriors? You have Bhim, you have Arjun, you have Drishtaketu, you have Chekitan, you have the king of Kashi, you have Purjit, you have Kunti Bhoj, you have Shaibhya, you have Yudhamanyu, you have Uttamauja, and so on and so forth. And the same is there in Hindi also. So the important thing about this would be in the next 2 slides, and we have about 2 minutes left. So I'll quickly run through them. I'll also share the slide with you. So I think what I'm going to request all those who are there in today's session, and we'll also pick up, the email IDs of the others. I'll, put this in a share folder. So you don't have to really bother about this. So the thing is, who is who? So there is a who is who that I put down here in terms of Yudhan and Virat and Drupad and Drishtaketu. So I would just, I'll not read all of them. I just quickly request you to run your eyes through each row and you will know who they are. So this is in terms of referring to the epic. When I said practical wisdom, in the epic, it is important to know who is who. So the who is mentioned here. But since there are so many names that are there, I have 3 pages of who is who actually. So this is page 1. So quickly run through this. I'm sure you can just quickly glance through this. Then this is page 2. So you have Purujit, you have Kunti Bhoj, you have Purujit Kunti Bhoj, which is one more interpreter's statement that it is only one person, not 2 different people. Then you have Shaibhya, then you have Yudhamanyu, then you have Vikranta, then you have Uttamauja. Okay, then I'm going to turn to the next slide also. And then you have Saubhadro, which is Abhimanyu, and you have Draupadeya, which is the 5 sons of Draupadi, Prativindya, Satasoma, Shrutakirti, Shatanika, and Shrutasena. Okay, so all this is fine. So this tells us who is who. But I think the most important thing, which is important from our perspective today, and is the spiritual significance of these names. So for the spiritual, so Yudhan is Shraddha, Virat is Samadhi, Drupad is Samaveda, then Drishtaketu is Yama, which is power of mental resistance. Then Chekitana is Smriti. Then Kashi Raja is Pragya, which is wisdom or discriminatory intelligence. Then Purujit is Pratyahara, which is there in our Patanjali Yoga Sutra as interiorization, which is shutting off of all the senses. Then Kunti Bhoja is Asan. Now you must be wondering, how the hell do you get all this? So for this, unless you are a big yogi, you will not you will not be able to even derive these correlations. So I'll just go through this and then I'll tell you from where I got it. So there is one of the references I have given, which is reference number 1. God talks to Arjuna, Royal Science of God Realization, and Paramahamsa Yogananda, who is the author of Autobiography of a Yogi. So through his yogic vision, he has found these correlations. Okay, so I think we are at 5-1 now. I'm going to stop. Fortunately, the session is also over in that sense. So, of course, the last one is what is yoga. So we move from animality to humanity to divinity to Brahmanatva. That is just a broad indication. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the share because the slides are over. And I think you can all unmute yourself and ask whatever questions you want, or your observations. So probably since I'm seeing Rajesh Agarwal's image first, so I'm going to request him to unmute and share his observations for discussion.
3 questions I wish to give. First is the management learnings from today's discussion. I feel this give hints to our day-to-day life. So some hints, some easy way to understand. And second, one more thing. The thing is, if I wish to read, go through it. In Bhagavad and Gita, 2 scripts I understand, but should I go for Gita directly or Bhagavad? What's the difference between them, or how to start reading so that have a better understanding? There's 2 questions, dear.
Yeah, sure. So let me address your question. So the management learning that we have, or the leadership learning that we have here, is that whenever we have to take a decision, we will always have 2 points of view. One Pandava point of view and one Kaurava point of view, which means we have the positives of a situation, we have the negatives of a situation, and it is always a clash when we take a decision. So we need to ensure that we are aligned to what is right, that we are doing what is correct, rather than what would be. So there is this difference between what is good and what is pleasant. So we normally choose what is pleasant, but not what is good, because what is good may be something that may not please everybody. So if I try to please everybody, it's like Sheikh Chilli. Sheikh Chilli wanted to please everybody, but he did not take good decisions. So our challenge is always taking the right decision, and there are always forces for and against a decision. That is one. Number 2 management learning that we have is, and that's the most interesting, in the first shloka, Dhritarashtra says, Mamakaha Pandavashaya, mere bete or Pandu ke beto ne kya kiya. So if as a manager you are already indicating your preference for certain ideas, then nobody will suggest any other idea. तो पहले से ही बोल दिया कि भाई गौरव मेरे बेटे हैं, then who will give an opposite point of view? Nobody will give. So if you are a good manager, you will not indicate your preference beforehand. You will always put the overall situation and try to get solution from the team. So that is my response to what is a management learning.
My wisdom should prevail. Our wisdom should prevail at the end of any tussle between good and bad. A wisdom should prevail. Yes. That's the learning.
Okay. Absolutely. So wisdom should prevail. That is the learning. Okay. And with respect to your question on Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, see, Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses, and Bhagavad Gita is only 700 verses. So it is easier to begin with the Bhagavad Gita than with the Bhagavatam, because Bhagavatam will take you a longer time, and it is more. So in fact, Bhagavatam is more like very high on micro setting. Usme it is all about Krishna. So if you are a Krishna Bhakta, then you may find the Bhagavatam very, very compelling and nice. But if you do not, if you want to understand principles, then the Bhagavad Gita is the easier route. That's my suggestion to you.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else?
I've already raised my question on chat.
Okay, let me look at that. Metaverse for you. Please write your email IDs. Yeah, I will do that. So what is your question?
Question is there.
Yeah. All character. Yeah. Okay. So I will say that, what I will do is.
Raj.
Vishwarup. So I will address the question of Sunil Garg. I will address the question of Sunil Ji Garg, and then I will take up the question from you. So Sunil, to answer your question in terms of human attributes, it is actually a very big, huge list of attributes that is there from Paramahamsa Yogananda. So what I can do is, since I have that book, God Talks to Arjun, I will scan those pages and send it to you, because it is just impossible in 5 minutes to look at all the characters and how those spiritual attributes have been derived.
Okay.
So that is my response to you, because I just tried to show this to you. I don't know whether you can see it. I have marked a lot of things. So it is actually some 70 pages. See, Paramahamsa Yogananda devotes 70 pages to the first shloka itself, and then after that he spends a lot of time in the shlokas 3 to 6. So that is my response to you, that I cannot give you a response in 3 minutes.
Okay. So we'll wait for that.
Yeah, I will send it to you. I will definitely send it to you, because it is a great eye-opener. Once you read that, your whole vision of the Gita will be very different. So I will scan those pages and send it to you, and send it to everybody in the group. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Vishwarup, you had a point.
You were talking
Vishwarup, we can't hear you clearly.
Vishwarup, your sound is not well. Can you write in brief on chat? Vishwarup, voice not coming.
So in fact, I think.
Okay, I will do it.
Okay.
So, meanwhile, there is a question from Deepak Yadav.
Yeah, so Deepak, the table that I was referring to in the last slide is actually from Paramahamsa Yogananda. And I'll just give you one example of how he derives that, so that you get an idea. So let us say that the name that he has taken, I'll just read out one of them. 1 minute. Okay, so just to give you an idea. Okay, so I had mentioned, or rather not I had derived from Paramahamsa Yogananda that Yuyudhan was Shraddha. So what is the logic? Anyway, I'm scanning and sending, but I'll just read out one so that you get the insight and the logic with which he derives. So he says this is from the Sanskrit root yudh, to fight. Yuyudhan means literally he who has been fighting for his own benefit. The metaphysical derivation is one who has an ardent desire to fight, to express spiritual consciousness. It represents the attracting principle of love, whose duty it is to take creation back to God. Felt by the devotee as Shraddha, or devotion to God, it is the inherent pull of the heart in longing to know Him. It stirs up the devotee to spiritual action and supports his sadhana. So he is deriving the Shraddha you have in your sadhana to the name Yuyudhan. So these are all names in the Pandava army. So all the positive qualities that are required by a sadhak are what are being derived by Paramahamsa Yogananda. Okay, so that is a logic that he uses. And for every name, so let me just quickly go back to share screen. Let me do share screen once again, and we will see what we mean by that. So yeah, this is the last slide. Right. So let us look at this. So Yuyudhan means Shraddha. So there is a derivation for that. Then Virat means Samadhi. So there is a Sanskrit root behind the name Yuyudhan. And from that Sanskrit root, he is deriving the spiritual meaning, saying that in the Bhagavad Gita, it is not simply a list of names. These are also the actual names of the qualities required. Because when I was responding to to Rajesh, if you recall, I said that whenever we take a decision, we always have the plus and the minus that is there. Or when we are trying to become spiritual, we have to overcome some of our negative tendencies. But it is not that we are full of negativity, we are also having positive things. So these are some of the qualities that we could ourselves have. And in the Bhagavad Gita, when Duryodhan is looking at the Pandava army, he is seeing all those positive qualities with whom the negative qualities have to fight. So the logic of derivation of these positive qualities is there in the book by Paramahamsa Yogananda, which I will share with you in terms of the scanned pages. So with that, I will stop the share. So this is just to tell you how he has done the correlation. And there is entire some 10 pages of correlation, which would be very useful to read. It will change your entire thinking about the Gita. So I'm going to stop the share now and come back to anyone else who has a question or an insight to share.
Biswarup, can you speak now your questions? Check your audio.
No, I'm actually, what Raj was telling is in the beginning, macro setting, probably what he meant was principle of Bhagavad Gita overall. Now, in the first chapter, we had description of people who were there, who the characters who were there, but the overall principle of what the message is to the mankind, that I thought if some briefing can be done, that will help us to concentrate on that point actually. That's what we were not able to
actually. Okay, fine. So the thing is that we've just started the first chapter. So
okay.
therefore,
okay.
Yeah. So when we go through the whole chapter, then we'll be able to appreciate. This is just the beginning. So an overall message of the chapter is best thought about after we have been through the 47 shlokas. But at this point in time, so there are two ways to look at this. You can look at very, very transactionally. So at each shloka there is a learning. And then when you take the whole 47 shlokas, there's a learning. So at this point in time, I'm only doing incremental, shloka by shloka learning. So the consolidation of the learning across the shlokas, we will do as we go through at some point in time, but not now. Now we are just beginning the whole chapter. So, we've just got into some of the aspects which is of interesting significance.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. So Deepak, I will send you the scan of those pages that should be able to address your curiosity to understand. I think. I have one question.
Kamal and Sunil Rastogi, you can write your email address here and switch on your video if you want to ask any question. Prakash Totlani's mail is already there, I think. patotlani@gmail.com, na?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, because your name itself tells the email.
So Prakash, any questions or any thoughts from your side?
No, presently not. But I will go in detail, and from next time I will ask so many questions.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I look forward to that. Yeah.
Anything from Sunil Rastogi and Rajkamal Gupta? Are you there?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
I'm yet to sink in, and I don't have a question at the moment.
Okay.
Let me go through.
Write your email address on the chat.
Yeah, I have given.
You have given, right? You have given. Rajkamal, are you there? Rajkamal's video is not coming, I think.
Perhaps he's not right now before the screen.
Yeah. So what time we decide for next turn? Same time?
12:15 is okay.
Sunday 12:15?
Sunday 12:15.
Yes, it's okay.
My side it is okay.
So
Achha,
that is the best
Sunil.
time, I think. Yeah, from your side, Rajshekar?
Yeah, it is okay from my side. I'm okay. I'm perfectly fine. I just have one question for you, Sunil,
Yes.
which is that have you noted down the email IDs, or you will have access to it?
I'm saving the chat and will send you that.
Yeah. Please save the chat.
Yeah.
So I will create a folder in Google Drive, and I
Yeah.
will share the slides with you
Mhm.
so that you can refer to it again.
Okay.
So in that chat, every email address is there.
Okay, fine. Good.
Fine?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for such a big effort. Good way.
Great show, Rajshekar. Again.
Full marks 10 upon 10.
Oh, thank you so much. Very kind of you. So we will again plan to meet on next Sunday at the same time. Okay?
Next
Sure,
Sunday,
sure.
Sunday 12:15 noon.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that will
Thank
be
you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Raj, thank you so much for your effort and so much of time you have given to all of us. We are all actually thrilled because this is a area where it's a very dark area for us. We have not, we want to know, but we do not get information on this subject. So
Yeah. I'm very happy to share all this because you can see all the books behind me. They must be of some use, right?
But Rajshekar ji,
Huh.
you can give some homework to us when you read this thing. We will definitely complete this. I am retired person.
अरे हम सभी लोग रिटायर हैं भाई. में से कौन काम कर रहा है? सभी लोग वेले बैठे हैं, तो we should actually do all this
Raj,
seriously.
you are not retired.
So yeah, definitely.
Raj, you are not retired. You are
Absolutely.
a very highly educated person. You are definitely teaching at some moment. I am very sure.
Yeah, so retired in the sense I'm no longer doing engineering work. Okay, I'm doing all
right.
kind of work. Take care, Prakash. I will definitely, think of.
But nowadays, this is called inner engineering.
Absolutely,
Yes.
बिल्कुल sir. आपने सही बोला. 100 on 100 for your,
So you are still doing
So
engineering
we
work.
will have more inner engineering as we go along.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's
Take
time
care,
to
and we'll meet up next Sunday.
time
Bye-bye.
to say final bye and end the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.